The family of a war veteran shot and killed at the hands of a police officer in Georgia is one step closer to justice. March 9th, Anthony Hill was spotted naked and walking around a neighborhood. Officer James Olson responded, killed Hill, who was unarmed. Now the DeKalb District Attorney is recommending the jury indict the officer on 2 counts of felony murder and other charges. Joining us right now is DeKalb County, Georgia DA Robert James. Robert, glad to have you here on News One Now. Atlanta Journal-Constitution did this extensive report showing that the last 10 years, nearly 200 cops investigated by grand juries, not one indictment. What caused you to say this needs to be an indictment for this cop who killed this Army veteran?
Well, it was the weight of the evidence. You know, at this point in the process, I can't really get into too many details about what our case is going to be, because as a prosecutor, I have ethical restrictions. But it was the weight of the evidence. You know, not to mention the fact that the victim in this case is unarmed.
This is always a difficult issue. We just saw the Tamir Rice case where the DA, Tim McGinty, literally came out and said he never was going to recommend any charges, and some people accused him of acting more like a defense attorney than the DA. Explain to folks what your role is in terms of when you are looking at these cases involving police officers and you're trying to decide whether or not to seek charges or not.
Well, my role is to investigate the facts, determine and ascertain what the facts are. And when I say what the facts are, I mean a determination that holds up in court beyond a reasonable doubt, and then apply those facts to the law. And so I need good facts, and I need and I need a law or laws that allow me to get the case into court. You know, in Georgia, you know, as in many states, police officers have defenses. In some places they have immunity. And so it's not always an easy thing to bring a case against a law enforcement officer. Even in Georgia, when an officer testifies in front of a grand jury, when an officer is going to be indicted, they have the right to testify in front of a grand jury and not be cross-examined, which is the only place in the nation where they have that right.
I got to ask you about that, because I saw that in the Atlanta Journal investigation, and that was stunning, that a police officer gets to testify and you as a DA or even the grand jury cannot cross-examine them. That happens in no other cases, correct?
It happens in no other cases, and it happens in no other states. And it's not just that he testifies and he's not subject to cross-examination, but he testifies last. And so we cannot put up rebuttal evidence when you present cases against officers for indictments. And it's not just in homicide cases. It's in any case against an officer, whether it's bribery or excessive force or what have you. You can't even put up evidence after their testimony. So the jury is just stuck, the grand jury is just stuck with the impression of what was said, and it's unrebutted.
Is it also the case, and again, I'm just basing it off of this AJC report, that a police officer also gets to sit in on the grand jury proceedings, even when there are other witnesses?
That is correct. They have the right in Georgia to sit through the entire grand jury proceeding. The officer and his lawyer, the lawyer cannot speak, but they're there to advise the officer. They can listen to every piece of testimony, and then at the conclusion, they have the right to make a statement or testify, and it's unquestioned and unrebutted.
So you are so just to wrap this up. So you're recommending that the grand jury indict. Does it now go through that process, the grand jury process?
Yes, in Georgia, we have to give officers 15 days notice that we're going to try to indict them in layman's terms. And so we served 15-day notice a couple days ago. The press conference was yesterday, which is where we made our announcement. We have drafted an indictment. We will present that indictment to a group of citizens in DeKalb County, a grand jury, and they will make a determination after we present our evidence, witnesses, audio tape, so forth and so on, whether or not the officer, Mr. Olson in this case, is going to be indicted for felony murder.
All right then, Robert James, DeKalb County DA. We surely appreciate you joining us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Joining us on the phone, folks, is Attorney Christopher Chestnut, the attorney for Anthony Hill's family. Chris, I got to ask you, it is stunning to me, and I think it's probably stunning to a lot of folks who are watching right now and listening, that in essence, a police officer in Georgia gets an unbelievable edge in going before a grand jury.
Yeah, I think that Roland is why nearly 200 of them have not been indicted. But I think this also underscores the power of the prosecutor and the importance of the African-American community getting out to vote. In this instance, with Anthony Hill, Robert James is an African-American prosecutor. He's prosecuting the cop for killing a black man, unarmed. Same thing we had in Baltimore. But in the other venues, these prosecutors don't look like us, and they're not indicting. And it's difficult. It's a challenge. It's a political risk for a prosecutor to prosecute an officer when he kills an unarmed black man, because prosecutors are generally their primary witnesses in a lot of their other criminal prosecutions. So there's a lot of political courage on behalf of a prosecutor to indict a police officer. And so Robert James should be commended, as Ms. Mosley should be commended. But we got to get out and vote and get a voice and get more prosecutors elected who resonate with the issues that are pertinent to our community.
Obviously, the family probably is happy to see this DA make this decision. And again, the grand jury has not indicted him. This is going to be the recommendation of the DA.
Correct. That's correct. It was a tough holiday season for him, but this was very encouraging for 2016 for the family.
Has the family has a civil suit been filed against this officer in the police department?
Yes. There has been a lawsuit filed. It hasn't been served yet, so we're beginning our civil discovery as well.
Okay, Chris Chestnut, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I want to turn to my panel right now. Andrew Lee, Republican strategist. Angela Peoples, co-director of Get Equal. Dr. Cleo Monago, behavioral health expert. When I read that Atlanta Journal-Constitution report, I mean, it was just stunning. They examined 10 years of cases. I think it was about 170 cops. And again, not a single officer indicted. And when you hear they get to testify last, they can give a written statement, no cross-examination, can sit in on all the witnesses. To me, that's called the best home court advantage.
Absolutely, and the point that you're making is exactly what myself and others are hearing from activists across the country, particularly people who are very active in the Black Lives Matter movement. When you're thinking about the non-indictment, the decision that was really devastating across the country, but specifically in communities like Cleveland, where we see no matter what the evidence, no matter video, no matter sort of the system is stacked in favor of the law enforcement, and a lot of folks are asking, so what does justice even really look like in this instance, where even if you have prosecutors like Marilyn Mosby and like folks, other African-American prosecutors that are trying to bring these indictments, we also see in places like Baltimore where there was a hung jury. And so it's clear that the system is stacked in favor of law enforcement and not in the value of black lives.
There's a Republican representative there in Georgia who's actually put forth a bill to change this, because many of them were stunned when this AJC report came out showing these sort of facts that the police officer gets to literally sit in. So if you bring in any witnesses, the officer gets to sit there and literally look at them as they're testifying. And so this is not a question of, so folks are trying to actually change it, but this is also a case, Andrew and Cleo, where who we elect as a DA matters.
Absolutely, Roland. I mean, we've been concentrating a lot on power in Washington and on these issues, but the truth really is that politics is local and it affects our lives every day. And what we're seeing, we saw in like New York, where they're having independent prosecutors, and different steps from Black Lives Matter and recommendations are like taking hold there. But people need to wake up.
But I also think we have to be honest in the reality that even in places like Ferguson, the city council members were black. You have other leadership that are like...
Not in Ferguson. Ferguson only had one black city council member. After the Mike Brown case blew up, 2 more were elected, but that was a case where 67% of the black folks, the town was 67% black, but most folks didn't even vote. It was nearly an all-white city council.
But when you think about the leadership in places, in other places, right?
Yeah.
And also after folks are elected in a place like Ferguson, right, there was still a lack of movement from, in terms of responding to law enforcement.
But the whole point I'm making is, if you look at Kenneth Thompson in Brooklyn, if you look at Marilyn Mosby, you look at this case here, we have seen Craig Watkins, who used to be the DA in Dallas, we have seen that when there's an African-American DA, there's a difference in terms of how they look at cases, whether it's opening up cold cases with DNA, in the case of freeing folks out of Brooklyn because the previous DA was throwing folks in jail. There's a difference, Cleo.
I think it's important to magnify that difference, Roland, because as we talked about before, going back to Ferguson, even after what went down in Ferguson occurred with Darren Wilson and Michael's murder, black people still didn't come out to vote. And
That was an increase, but
it was an increase.
It was an increase,
Which wasn't difficult to happen, because one person not voting to two people voting is still a smaller
Precisely,
vote.
precisely.
Still, when we get a decision to indict, or even an intention to indict, that doesn't equate to justice.
No, I understand. I understand that. But here's what I'm trying to get our viewers to understand. Justice is on this end.
Sure.
But if I don't have, I got, in order to get to justice, I got to get an indictment. In order to get an indictment, I need to have somebody who is the DA who is going to actually bring forth the indictment. Before I can get that DA, I need folks to vote. And so, yes, it is not a be-all to end-all, but I do need people to understand. I don't want people to say, well, they still didn't get indicted and we had a black DA.
Absolutely.
But the reality is, if you didn't have that DA, you may not even have the investigation.
Right.
That is
A key message here that I don't want to get lost, that the attorney first mentioned, and Roland is talking about now, is that our people need to vote. Our people need to stop waiting for the big national elections and realize what happens locally makes a difference. And that, like Roland mentioned, when there's a black DA, we have the better potential of getting justice. And in so many cases, we have not gotten justice. And we need to take a look at our resistance to voting. It's a big deal, and it's strange that, like in Ferguson, that after what went down there, people still overall were apprehensive to come out and vote. What's up, black folks? We need to come out of this trance and step up and take care of ourselves. So
Because the point we keep making is who you vote for mayor and city council, if you're in a city manager form of government, they hire the city manager. City manager hires a police chief and the fire chief. And so there's a trickle-down effect. And so, yes, the mistake is when people have these conversations that it's a be-all to end-all. Just like with body cameras, that's not the case where, if you get body cameras, it's all solved. It is a part of the puzzle. But if you don't even vote, none of that stuff is going to happen. No.
That was excellent commentary. So for all of those people out there that say, nah, I'm not voting because it doesn't mean anything, that's a bunch of crap. Even if you don't get the person that you want in there, at least express yourself, because more people that express themselves, the more chance it is that you will get that person in there that's going to do the job that should be done. So vote, people.